Hello there. Welcome to this brief webinar discussion on overthinking and how we can get hooked into our thoughts. I thought it'd be quite useful to have this discussion space to really help understand how we can get so embroiled in our thoughts and memories that it can really take us off track and we can lose a sense of time, space, and emotionally we can become completely caught up in the images, thoughts, memories that are going through our minds. So I put this together just because I'm seeing a lot of people at the moment who are really struggling with overthinking and the anxiety that comes with overthinking often. So let's go into then. I've got just a few brief slides just to help me with the discussion. And then at the end, time for any questions. And when we have the questions, I will turn off the recording just so that if you want to speak or ask a question, you know it's not going to be recorded and up on YouTube later. It'll be just between you and me. All right. So I'm going to then just move away there we go. Good. So as the title says, stepping back from overthinking, because that's something that we do notice ourselves getting caught up in. And it's something we all do. So first of all, just looking at, what our thoughts are and what they're not. And then how do we go about observing our thoughts and feelings more helpfully for us and to help us describe what's going on in our body? And I'm going to be talking you through a exercise that I often use with people, and it's called dipping in and out of the river. And so I'll describe that a little bit more, and then time, hopefully, for some questions at the end. Now, as you might know, I'm a therapist, but also confidence coach. So I work with people who are struggling in the broader sense with a sense of maybe identity or beliefs within yourself. And you might be caught up in certain patterns of thinking and certain patterns of response that it's very hard to get out of on your own. So that's why you might engage somebody who can help you on that journey, either because I've been through there myself or because I've helped a lot of people to come through that and navigate through those difficult times. So I'm often working with people's thoughts, but I help people to describe that, thoughts, the way we work with thoughts in any sort of context of coaching or therapy is that we can look at the content of the thought. So we can look at the nitty-gritty of the sorts of thoughts you're saying, what that means about you, what that means about other people, and trying to challenge some of those nitty-gritty thoughts. Or I can sometimes work with people saying that actually being in your thoughts, going with those stories, those old memories, is getting you stuck. And we don't need to try and delve and understand the meaning and why that thought is there or why it's not, but just understand that there's a process of thinking, a pattern of thinking that I might be overthinking in a repetitive, behavioral, habitual way. And getting caught up in the content of it is not going to help. So it's almost like recognizing that this thought is coming in and that might lead me into a pattern of overthinking, but that's the process that I'm trying to learn to change. Our mind is constantly giving us thoughts. We're never going to stop thoughts. And any sort of therapy or any sort of intervention is not about stopping thoughts from coming. It's about not engaging with the thoughts. It's about letting the thoughts come and go through, because we are not our thoughts. If you really sort of stop to consider, if we are noticing thoughts going through our head, then are we those thoughts, or are we the observer noticing the thoughts? And that's where we need to come to, that Our mind is busy. There's neural pathways being fired off all the time. We're trying to make sense of the world. And we're also trying to make sense of what our body is experiencing. So we are responding to things not only through the thoughts that pop into our mind, but the thoughts that might be coming because of this experience our body is having that sends the neuron pathways up to the brain. And then we're having a thought about it. So it can come either way. Thoughts lead to feelings, but then the physical sensations and feelings might lead to further thoughts. But by observing these, we can help understand ourselves better, help us understand how we are reacting when we're in it, we're reacting to something. But when we are stepping back, not being completely caught up in what we're thinking about, we can help ourselves to respond. And we have choices then. We can respond in different ways. We can choose the way that we react and respond to situations. We're enabling ourselves to consider what's going to be most helpful, what's going to be my best option, what are the options, the realistic options. Not in an overthinking way, but more in a, right, here's the situation, here's the current situation, I'm in the present moment. How do I want to manage this? How do I want to handle it? So that's why it's useful to be able to utilize strategies to not go with the content of the thinking, but just to step back and watch it coming through. Hopefully that makes sense. If you have any questions about this, obviously you can ask me. So a really helpful analogy is thinking about the thoughts coming through our mind almost like a river, the river of thoughts coming through. And we are like at the bedrock that these thoughts are coming through. So we can understand it that way. And an even better way, if we are the observer, then we are not connected to those thoughts necessarily, but every so often we might watch those thoughts rushing through in the river of thinking. So we can be standing on the riverbank or standing, like in this image, on the boardwalk and observing the thoughts flowing past us. We can imagine then that we don't have to go with every thought that comes in. Wouldn't that be exhausting if we're literally having to pay attention to every single thought that's coming through our mind? We wouldn't be able to do anything else, would we? So we're not designed to do that. That's not what the thoughts are there for. They're just a way of us trying to adapt and trying to make sense of the world around us. We're trying to have a perception of what's going on. But our brain likes to sort of focus attention and distill what we are seeing and hearing and experiencing. And we are only needing to take on board certain sort of thoughts, certain feelings. So imagining your thoughts as like a river coming through, and you have a choice whether you pay attention or a choice of not paying attention. It's up to you. These thoughts that are coming through are just one perception as well. There are perception. It doesn't mean all those thoughts are true and that we have to necessarily go with them. So if you can hold that concept, that will also, I think, be very, very helpful. Lastly, I just wanted to sort of acknowledge that it can feel really, really magnetic. Some of these thoughts are patterns that we have, and we have certain beliefs underneath that tell us we must know, we must be prepared, we must understand these thoughts more. And we can build up stories, patterns and scenarios in our head around what we think might happen next, or how things turned out, or what other people might be thinking or saying about us or situations. So we generate these whole scenarios and stories in our head, but are they real? Or are they just our attempt at trying to make sense of what's going on around us? And sometimes we generate these things based on our emotional response, not because there's any facts there. So it's different to understand what's a fact right now. What am I reacting to here? Or is this just my version of events? Is this my opinion about it? And do I need to go with this right now or come away from it? When I'm working with people, I say to them, there's useful sort of styles of thinking that we all commonly have. And the ones to look out for are the what ifs, which are often generating these worried, sort of future based ideas about what may or may not happen. And the what ifs generally go down the worry line of the worst case scenario. So look out for those. And then look out for the if onlys. So that's based in the past. If only, regret, guilt, sadness might be attached to some of those thoughts. But if onlys are those ones that have already happened, we can't change them. And yet somehow we are caught up in wanting things to be different. And again, there might be beliefs under there, not of being prepared, but almost of, I need to learn from this. I mustn't make the same mistake again. So I must try and do this. And then finally, the why me's. So a sense of, I don't understand why this is happening. And the why me or why have they, but the why. Why is this right now my situation? And trying to understand it, but sometimes we can't get to the bottom of it because we haven't got all the information. So going around and around thinking about it more doesn't help. So for all those reasons that, um, you know, are the content of our thoughts might be just one perception. It's not always the fact, and we can build scenarios and stories around it. We can get caught up in it and then not actually responding to things, but we're reacting to whatever our thoughts are telling us. So for all those reasons, it's good to be able to stand back, to be on the riverbank or the boardwalk, watching those thoughts go by. So it's an intention really, a sort of understanding, right, where am I at and what do I need? So dipping in and out of the river is one exercise. There are lots of different exercises, lots of mindfulness approaches that are useful. But this one in particular really identifies how our thinking can catch us and take us on a journey down the river. And in order to step out of that, is about being able to pull yourself back, recognize I'm going with the thought, pull yourself back, connect back into the here and now, and then ask yourself, I have a choice now. Do I want to go back with that thought or not? And each time you're practicing acknowledging the thoughts are there, the feelings are turning up, and you're connecting in your body, back in the room, back engaging with what's going on really around you, and asking yourself that question. I've just been hooked up again in that thought about, in that old pattern, that old story, and I have a choice now. Do I want to go with it or do I want to do something else? It takes time. This sort of practice is changing the neuro pathways. So it's based in the scientific neuroscience of how neuroplasticity works. So you're trying to rewire how your brain is firing in these instances rather than automatically without thinking going with those thoughts because it feels like there's uncertainty or it feels like I need to learn something. And instead having that conscious awareness, this is a trigger for me. What do I need to do? I need to hold myself back. So I've done a real-time sort of practice so you can work along with me as I'm doing it. And I will share a link for you and practice that in any sort of opportunity. A few times a day is perfect. It's really good if you can do that. But even if it's once a day for a while, just when you remember, just practicing coming in and out. Oh, I'm hooked there, coming back into the room and practicing that. All right. So any questions then? If you've got any questions, feel free to put them in the chat or ask me. I'm going to turn off the video in a minute, and look out for my free recording. It's on YouTube channel, so I'll add it as a link, and hopefully you'll see that. And all right, I'll stop the recording now.